Hi and welcome to another part of the JavaScript tutorials, and in this part we're going to cover all about the event listeners. So remember that in the last part we covered the events, and in events, AddEvent listeners are just like events, with the difference that we put them inside of the JavaScript code instead of using them in the HTML. So the way we do this is just the same as what we did for index2.html. There's this event that happens and then the reaction. So here, instead of our div tag, we had this on mouse over and on mouse out. But in this part, we're going to cover this inside of the AddEventListener instead of the JavaScript code section. So let me first of all create another file. And here I'm going to create a new file by touch another index.html, and then what I'm going to do is to open the file. So another index.html, and then what I'm going to do is to copy all of this code inside of the index.html and paste them right over here. So now we don't need any of these events right over here, and instead we're going to write this inside of the JavaScript code. So we're going to make the functions be wherever they are, and remove all of these lines inside of the functions. So what I'm going to do here is to add the event listeners for each of the actions that we're looking for. So first of all, we need to write document.getElementById, and then add myId. So here we use .AddEventListener, AddEventListener, and then the event that we're going to work on is on mouse out and on mouse over. So let us take a look at the name of the event here. So we had the functions and we had on mouse over. So we had this for the welcome, and also we had hello world for on mouse out. So let me do this here as well, and then we're going to consider a function for each one of them. So mouse over is for on mouse over, and then I'm going to copy and paste exactly the same code with the difference that it's here for the on mouse out. So on mouse out for the event, and the mouse out for the function related to that event. So right over here, instead of the function, we're going to add the same thing, document.getElementsById, .getElementById, and then myId, .innerHTML, and make this equal to welcome. And then instead of the other function, we're going to write document.getElementById, myId, and then .innerHTML, and then make it equal to hello world. So that's it. So let me also create this, and okay, so let's save this and run this with the live server. So let's also change the way they are. Okay, now let's check this. So right over here, the problem is that the name of the event is not here exactly the same as what we had instead of the name of that event. So let me first close this, and here let's take a look at index2. So as you can see, we have on mouse over for the name of the event, but here in the event listener the name is a bit different. We have mouse over and mouse out instead of on mouse over and on mouse out. So let's save this, and as you can see, it works. So be really careful about that, because the name of the events inside of the AddEventListener is different from what we have inside of the events. So this is exactly working the same as index2.html. So let me run this with the live server. When we do live server, and as you can see, it works exactly the same as this one. This one is with the AddEventListener, and the other one, index2.html, is with the event listener. It's with the events. Sorry. So now let's take a look at what other events we can cover inside of the AddEventListener. So it doesn't just boil down to what we can do with the mouse. You can also do some of the operations and actions with the keyboard. It can be a touch events, but that is mostly for the mobile phones and mobile apps. And we also have the window events and form events. So let's take a look at the keyboard events at first. So let me close this one, and so for example, let us add something else, such as first of all, let's play around with some of the mouse events instead of just mouse out and mouse over. So imagine that most of the time we want to have the mouse move, right? So we can have the mouse move. So mouse, and then I'm going to add move. And let's copy this function for the mouse move, but notice that some of these actions might have contradiction with the other actions, so I will explain that. So let me call this mouse move, and then the action here, let's say mouse moved. Also, let's here say mouse out, and mouse over. So now let's save this and take a look at, okay, here we need to also add mouse move and save this. Now let's take a look at here, mouse out, mouse moved, but it doesn't ever say mouse over, right? Because the mouse is moving, and at the same time that it's moving, it's also over, so it chooses mouse move over mouse over, right? So we can never see what when it gets over the here the div tag, this rectangle, this red rectangle. So be real careful about that, because some of the events might be ignored because you have another event interfering with that event. Also, let's take a look at some of the events with the keyboard. So the most famous one is the one with the key press. So let me add that by just copying this one to make it faster. Copy and paste it. So here, instead of the mouse move, we're going to add the key press event. So also be careful about the names to write it exactly the same. And you can find the you can Google all of the events related to AddEventListener. You can easily find that. So I'm also going to define a function called key press, and then use it afterwards. So the key press is one of the most famous events that you might have seen inside of the softwares or web pages or web applications. So that is a very handy one, and here we can write that right here. So here I can, for example, say key pressed. So this is a key press by the keyboard, and so everything works. If I just let me fix this, save this, and so let's click on this page, and now let's click on the key. So let's see, why isn't it working? So the main reason that it's not working is due to the fact that here we shouldn't for this one we shouldn't write .getElementById because this is a kind of an event listener for the keyboard, so it shouldn't just work on this specific tag, right? So here let me remove this part, and the reason we added this was because we copied from the other AddEventListeners, so it went completely wrong. So let me save this right now, and let's work with it, and let's click on here and press a key. As you can see, key press will be shown. So another time, another key press. Then if I have the mouse move, as you can see, the mouse move only works once we move on the on this specific div tag, right? So if I remove the mouse move from the from just this specific tag with this specific ID and save this, you'll see that the mouse move works all the time. So if I do not move the mouse and have a key press, as you can see, we'll have the key press. If I again have the mouse move, as you can see, we have the mouse move. By the way, let me fix this because we were on this page. So there we go. So now let's add some other key events, right? So we had right now, if we click on any of the keys, it will show us the key press, but it doesn't tell us which key it is. So imagine that you want to work with a specific key and you want to know what kind of key you are clicking on. So let's see how we can manage that. So in order to do that, we need to make some small changes here inside of our key press. So here, instead of the key press, we can write it in a different format. So we need the variable event, and then we'll need to write our function in a bit different manner. And then let me open a bracket. So right over here, I'm going to add the same line as we had instead of this function, but a little bit different. So here we'll have the event variable, and then we will have the ID. So document.getElementById.innerHTML. So we have the event as the variable. So here I can say that the key or yes, the key, and then here I can write so we will have the $sign before the bracket, and then here we can write event.key. So this is the name of the key, and here it's better to write it this way with one of apostrophe, so that we can see event.key. So let's save this and click here, and as you can see, the key J pressed. So let me add ed here. So again, press the key K is pressed, or the key O pressed, the key enter pressed, or the key, and then here I've clicked space. So if you want to know what key has been pressed, we can say with the code, and then let's copy this one, and then event.code, right? Event.code, in order to see what code it is. So let's try that. Save this and enter, and as you can see, the key pressed with the code space. So if I click on T, you will see that the key T pressed with the code key T. So let's make this a bit bigger, but that's not a big deal. So let's do this right now. So it's about the height. Let's make it double. Let's double the height and save this. Now if I click here, the key G pressed with the code key G. So let's make this a bit bigger. For example, 200 might be fine, and make the padding a bit bigger. So for example, 60. So hello world, click here, press the key actually K pressed with the code key K, sorry. So here that's it for this part of the tutorial. We've learned how to work with the different add event listeners, whether it's a key on your computer on the keyboard of your computer or your mouse click or whatever other event listener that you want to work on. So we've learned all of them all together.